And so his father sent his younger brother, known as Prince Enlil, sent him to the solar system bod, sent him to planet Earth, and said, You shall become the Lord of Command. You are the Lord of the Word. Prince Ea, you shall remain, and you will continue to repopulate the planet with beasts and plants. You shall continue to recreate the environment on this world, and you shall be known as the Lord of Creation. And so what we have, ladies and gentlemen, are two brothers, the Lord of the Word and the Lord of Creation, vying for dominion over the planet. Now, the Lord of the Word, Enlil, I'm going to jokingly refer to him as an accountant. He was the type that would have gone to Yale and Harvard. He had a master's in banking, accounting, and business principles. And when he took over control of the mines, he began to work the beasts unmercilessly. He began to work them until they dropped. Because, in fact, it was just an experiment. It was just a beast. It was a hybrid created to do nothing more than work. It had no awareness. It had no soul. It had no mind. Now, please, before you get upset, I did say that in the early stages, the beast had no soul. I did not say that it did not acquire one. In the early stages, the beast was worked in the fields and the mines until it dropped. The Lord of the Word did not care. It was a test tube experiment. It was expendable. And then began the conflict between the Lord of the Word and the Lord of Creation. The Lord of Creation was trying to create life for the sake of life itself. What if you created life and allowed it to seek its own destiny? What if you created life and gave it tools, gave it wisdom, gave it knowledge, gave it everything necessary to, one, conceive of a goal, and two, to achieve it? What a wondrous experiment that would be. Now, we have to take a look at Prince Ea's situation, because he had grown up in the Sirius star system that had an institutional system that was billions of years old. It, in fact, accounted to the Orion star system. The Orion star system had institutions and systems that were billions of years even older. In other words, I am suggesting to you that the systems, the institutions that are here on Earth did not begin and naturally evolve from man, that they were placed here by extraterrestrials, by star beings, by divinities, by whatever one wishes to call them. I suggest to you that some of those institutions that we are burdened with, which absolutely make no sense, would not have naturally have evolved of man. I do not believe that some of the craziness that we are saddled with could naturally have occurred. They have been forced on us. Prince Ea, saddled with institutions and systems for hundreds of thousands of years, was trying to create an experiment with free will and free achieving of one's own destiny. The Lord of the Word was destroying the experiment. Prince Ea, in an attempt to free the beast, Prince Ea protested and was promptly removed from his command. No longer was the Lord of Creation the ultimate dominion over the beast. No, now it was passed on to the Lord of the Word, and the Lord of the Word used the beast until it dropped. The Lord of Creation, Prince Ea, fled to Africa, and there he began his experiment anew. This experiment started about 2 million years ago, and he tried to once again create a new Adama, a new beast, with a little more intelligence, a little more awareness, and being a little bit more perceptive. In time, however, the experiment known as Adama Prince Ea could no longer stand the abuse. He could no longer stand the outright ruthlessness with which the Lord of the Command, the Lord of the Word, was dealing with the animal, with the beast. And so, on one given evening, a very fateful night, the Lord of Creation, Prince Ea, snuck into the garden that he had once had dominion over. And there he found a beast. And he took the beast aside, and he gave him the knowledge of knowing each other. And he taught one male what he could enjoy with the female. And you have to understand that prior to this time, all matings, all unions of the beasts were absolutely controlled by the gods, by the technicians, by Lord Ea himself at some point. In order to get the appropriate offspring, one had to have the right male with the right female. All matings were controlled. All matings were scheduled. No deviation would be permitted or the experiment would be ruined. Prince Ea, the Genesis scientist, wore on his sleeve the logo of all the Genesis scientists. It was two intertwining strands of DNA. The primitive beast who looked at this DNA strands on the sleeve of all of the technicians, but especially on the sleeve of Prince Ea, the lord of all the Genesis scientists, the beast looked at those intertwining strands of DNA and he saw snakes. In fact, the two intertwining serpents have given birth to the caduceus, the symbol that the medical field uses even to this day. Two intertwining serpents, two snakes. And so, as the Lord of Creation, as Lord of the Genesis scientists, as Lord of the serpents, Prince Ea snuck into the garden, and he exposed the beast to the knowledge of knowing each other. Pardon me, and the beast, for one moment in its miserable and wretched life, could be as the gods. The beast could mate and could enjoy any female, any male, for as long and whenever he wanted. In a life that was served in the mines, in the fields, and worked until death, the beast was able on its own to have a moment's pleasure. He had the way of the gods at his hands. He was able to make a choice. And so the beast then began to spread the knowledge, the illicit knowledge. And the Lord of Command, the Lord of the Word, walking in the garden one day, noticed that there were two beasts mating. The ultimate sin, the blaspheming, the sacrilege, the ruining of the experiments. Who knows what kind of offspring would be born of an uncontrolled, unscheduled, unsupervised mating. And so he immediately had the offending beast thrown out of the garden. He discovered that in fact there were other beasts who were enjoying the knowledge of the gods, the wisdom of the gods, the ability to have pleasure at any moment. And they were tossed out of the garden. The Lord of the Word got extraordinarily upset, and he began to pass new commands. The first edict that he issued was that his brother, the Lord of Creation, would henceforth never be allowed in the garden, and that anything and everything that was attributed to him would be considered to be evil. Prince Ea, in breaking the very backbone of the rules of the system, by destroying the breeding experiment, personified evil. In the Sirius and the Orion star systems, that which has the greatest evil, the greatest connotation of evil, is that which was anti-system. Prince Ea personified the worst, the most heinous crime that one could commit. Da-Ea, known also as Lord. Lord in all ancient languages was Baal. Da-Ea Baal became the personification of evil. Da-Ea Baal is the root for diabolic, diablo, devil. In the story, the creation story that we are all familiar with, It is the serpent who sneaks into the garden to seduce Adam and Eve. And I'm going to suggest to you that it is Prince Ea, the Lord Genesis scientist, the Lord of the serpents, the Lord of creation, the very one who created man in the very beginning, who wanted the experiment to achieve destiny, to achieve free will. It is that very same Lord of creation who went in and gave man an opportunity to get kicked out of the garden. An opportunity to get kicked out of the garden. All offending beasts were removed, and the Lord of the Word labeled anything and everything connected with Lord Da'ea Ba'el as evil. The commands for all the beasts were then once again renewed. The first command, thou shalt have no other lords before me. Prince Ea is no longer the Lord of creation. Any and all of his technicians are no longer the lords. I am the one and only Lord, so saith I, the Lord of the Word. Henceforth, all beasts must... I'm sorry, getting carried away here, but all beasts must attend on the seventh day. They must attend one of my houses in which they will praise me. They will promise to obey me. They will follow my every command and pledge undying loyalty to only me. So saith I, the Lord of the Word. When I bond two of you beasts together, thou shalt not break the bond which I have created, or you will ruin the breeding experiment. The bond which I have created, thou shalt not break. Thou shalt not commit adultery. So saith I, the Lord of the Word. Those who indulge in this heinous act will be removed immediately from the garden, as a passing warning to all the offending females. Once, when they were treated and cared for in the nursing centers, where they were put in immersion tanks and they did not have to suffer the pains of birthing, now the offending females were kicked out of the garden, and they would have to suffer the pains of childbirth without the technological and medical help. That is the curse that I place upon you, so saith I, the Lord of the Word. What I am reducing down here in a few moments is a suggestion to you that there was an individual attempting to carry on a business, and the Lord of the Word issued commands in order to keep the experiment pure, in order to keep the slave labor pure, in order to keep the profits going. Prince Ea, now the personification of evil, the Lord of the serpents, found in the rejected beasts a boon, an opportunity. He protested to his sister, who argued with him. She said, "Leave them be. You will get in more trouble." How much more trouble can I be in, sister? And look at these beasts. They're rejects. Nobody wants them. They are totally ruined. I can work with them. What if life could achieve its own destiny? What if we gave this beast the opportunity to dream and gave him the tools and the knowledge to achieve his own destiny? What would happen if life could simply have free will? In a system in Orion, in the system in Sirius, that is unheard of. And the sister warned him, you are looking for the most evil, the most horrendous concept that our star system can imagine. Father, the Lord of the Word, the Orion Queen, will not permit it. And so, Prince Ea took in hand the rejects, the unworthy, the tainted, the beast who enjoyed mating, and he began to work with them. He gave them the knowledge of how to survive out in the wilderness. He showed them how to make fire and how to create shelters. But the way in the wilderness was difficult, and many of the beasts could not handle the terror of the jungle. They could not handle the horror of the beasts in the wilderness. Many of the beasts wanted to return to the garden. The Lord of the Word was waiting for him. And the Lord of the Word said, if you want to come back into my garden, you must obey all of my new commands. Thou shalt have no other Lord before me. Thou shalt attend my house every seventh day and pledge allegiance and loyalty to only me. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And then and only then will you be redeemed. Redemption lies in accepting only me. So saith I, the Lord of the Word. And many of the beasts did return to the fold. And many of the beasts found they would prefer the independence, the opportunity to enjoy pleasure, and to revel in being a reject. For at least in being kicked out of the system, they had an opportunity to grow and to develop free will. Some of the beasts were taken aside, and they were taught the secrets of the serpent. They attended the mystery schools. They were hidden away in the caves. And from the caves emerged teachers. Special beasts who had the ability to remember, who had the ability to repeat the stories of Prince Ea with a certain degree of faithfulness. Now the term Su, S-U, is the diminutive of the word Zu. If you remember earlier, we were talking about Lord Zu, the master and the overlord. The diminutive of master and overlord is teacher or master, Su. The teachers of the Lord of the Serpent, those who went out and began to work with the other rejected Dhammas, they were known as the Eyasu. I am going to suggest to you tomorrow night that there was an extraordinarily famous Eyasu who knew of the mysteries of the serpent, who knew the true story, who knew that the institution and the system did not care about the beast, did not care about the rejects, but in fact concerned itself with only one thing, the perpetuation of the system and its profits. This very famous Eyasu, thousands of years later, would be referred to as Iesu. Iesu is a name in Greek that we now refer to as Jesus. I am going to suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that Jesus, Iesu, was a teacher of righteousness, one who knew the truth, knew the secrets of the creation of man, knew the secrets of the institution, and knew that free will was the purpose of the experiment, the purpose in mind of the creator Da'eya, free will and destiny. But the institution and the systems brought on planet Earth would simply not permit it. The story of Iesu, the Eyasu, his marriage, his crucifixion, and his purpose in life we'll discuss tomorrow night. I thank you at this point again for allowing me to be with you. I hope that some of this has at the very least been interesting. I hope some of it has made sense. I again invite you tomorrow to call Mr. Remlin, call the network, let them know whether or not you like the program. If you could, please, we are asking for assistance in our research. We have 4 books we would like to make available to you. One book is the story of the Star Elder, the warrior who crashed, who fell from the skies. Terra 1 and Terra 2, probably the core of our work, which is the hidden history of mankind. It's this story that I have just been repeating to you. We have another book called Terra Prophecy. We will talk about that one tomorrow. It's about crop circles, petroglyphs, and the fulfillment of prophecies that are happening in this year. And then finally, the second coming conspiracy, in which I suggest the powers that be, the secret powers behind the secret societies. We'll talk about them also tomorrow. If you would, please call Rod, call my family in the morning. We'd be more than happy to provide you with the reading list, information on our books, up-and-coming trips where we take people out into the Starlands. Our phone number is area code 602-404-8050. I cannot begin to thank Rod, the network, Ivy West, and several of you out there who have supported us in the past. Thank you very much. And if this is intriguing, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love tomorrow night, because tomorrow night we're going to get into the Kennedy assassination, crop circles, prophecies, Mars, the Aryan takeover, the Santilli tape, Roswell incident, chupacabras, and on and on. For now, I'd like to continue here in the last half hour and suggest to you that we have been manipulated and deceived from the very inception. The holy books, the institutions, many of the documents that have been created over our early history has served but one purpose, and that is to deliberately deceive us, to take us away from the possibility that we have free will. Ladies and gentlemen, we are an experiment gone wrong. I am sure many of you probably feel as if you're a reject. You wonder, where did I come from? How did I end up on this planet? How did I get here? I filled out the application properly and I ended up here. I am sure most of you know in your hearts there's something wrong here. I truly believe we all want to believe in the churches and the institutions. We really do. But somehow the powers that be have perverted it for whatever reason. I am suggesting that it is an extraterrestrial source. I am suggesting that it is an angelic, divine, godly, whatever word you choose to pick. It is a star being intervention. We are an experiment in free will. We are rejects. I suggest that hardwired into your DNA is an anti-system gene. I suggest that you would prefer to enjoy a day in the park. I would suggest you would prefer to be with your mate. I would suggest that you would prefer physical pleasures, enjoying a game, or simply taking a nap rather than going to work, paying taxes, and supporting individuals who seem not to know what life is about. I am suggesting to you that you have a renegade gene in your DNA. In the Terra Papers, we detail how Prince Ea actually tampered with your genetic makeup in order to make sure that you would not return to the system. There was only one way in which he could prevent the reject beasts, the Eyasu, from going back and falling to the system once again. I will leave that to the Terra Papers and hope that we have piqued your curiosity and that you'll at least be interested in getting a copy. I would like to leave you here in the last few minutes with probably the greatest travesty, the most horrendous epic in our history. Because over the course of time, amends were made between the Lord of Creation and the Lord of the Word. They were brothers. They made up, and they once again began to work together on planet Earth. It was the Lord of the Word that was responsible for the flood. It was his effort to destroy the beast. He was truly attempting to eliminate this troublesome, worrisome reject. But it didn't work. They worked together in time, and they both had families. The eldest son of Prince Ea, of Enki, was known as Marduk. Another name in all of the ancient societies, again in Mesopotamia, Babylonia, in Egypt. I highly recommend Mr. Hancock's work, Zachariah Sitchin's works, and others, in which you will find very brief histories of Marduk, otherwise known as Ra. Ra is a figure that was made very popular recently in a movie called Stargate. He was the eldest son of Prince Ea. Ra Marduk found himself on planet Earth, deprived of the kingship of the system known as Sirius. In essence, we are replicating exactly what occurred millions of years earlier with a young king named Zeus. Marduk would never ascend to the throne. And so his story is long and varied, but in time he found an ally in the stars. In a far distant star system, he found a reptilian queen, one who was an antagonist, a foe of the Orion queen. I refer to her as the rebel queen. This rebel queen, frustrated of the throne of Orion, sided with Ra. And between the two of them, they descended upon Earth. They removed all of the Sirian royal family, allowed only those who would pledge their allegiance to Ra to remain on planet Earth. We have evidence to show that Ra changed the stelae. He changed the stone inscriptions. He changed the records, and he made himself the one and only God. Now, I will leave you with probably the most outrageous thought of the evening, as if that were possible. The reptilian technology utilized by the queens of Orion was very simple. Over billions of years of warfare and conflict, they made a very simple discovery. When one conquers a planet, it is not efficient to destroy the people of the planet who will not obey. After all, they are able-bodied workers. They are adapted to the environment of the planet. And so the Orion reptilian technology for conducting war and controlling populations, rather than fall to the destruction and termination of life, they developed a very simple system. Rather than destroy the person, they simply reprogrammed the brain. Human beings, physical beings, are bioelectrical chemical beings. You can be affected by high transmission power lines. You can be affected by radiation from computer screens. You can be affected by electronic stimuli. The Orion queens have mastered the technology which allows them to sever memories and to simply reprogram the individual. The rebel queen, possessed of the very same technology, in alliance with Ra, descended upon planet Earth, and they began the very systematic and simple ritual of reprogramming the minds of all of the inhabitants of our planet. Ladies and gentlemen, I am suggesting that only 6,000 years ago, somewhere around 4,000 to 6,000 BC, there was a very systematic elimination of all of our memories. We have been programmed to forget anything that occurred prior to the existence of Ra. I know that may sound difficult, but allow me to produce one very simple fact which I suggest proves this thesis. We have found that in the evolution of animals and creatures, on planet Earth, no creature will ever develop a major organ of any sort if it does not use it. In other words, no creature will develop an extra leg if it does not use it. If it does not use the extra leg, the leg will atrophy and it will fall away. The insects, the animals, the beings of this planet are efficient in their evolution. Only the strong survives. A major organ must be used or it atrophies and dies away. Scientists, scholars, physiologists, doctors, experts in many fields all agree on one simple fact about the human brain. It appears that we use less than 10% of the brain. How is that possible? If 90% of the human brain is unused, over the course of millions of years, it would atrophy and die away. I am suggesting to you that this is evidence that we have been reprogrammed. It is only a few thousand years ago that this occurred. Time has not elapsed sufficient to atrophy the brain. However, we use less than 10% of the brain. Something or someone somehow has disconnected us from our brain. I am suggesting to you that over the course of the systematic elimination of our memories, each one of us was marched down a long, dark tunnel, taken into a bright light, and there in the light was the operating room in which the memory cords were severed. We emerged faithful and loyal servants, remembering nothing before the existence of Ra, nothing before the existence of the one true Sun God. The only thing that we were left with is a lingering memory of a long, dark tunnel and a light at the end. I leave you with probably the most blasphemous thought of the evening. I believe that we are programmed to go to the light. I believe that every religion, every discipline, everything that we are taught tells us, go to the light. And I'm going to leave you with this thought. I'm going to suggest to you that our research says, don't go to the light. When we shed the mortal coils, when you get to the tunnel and you face the light, may I make the suggestion, turn around. Look out into the universe, because we have been deceived once again. The truth is, we should go to our own light, because out there somewhere, and at this point we don't have the time to pursue it, but somewhere out there is your light. We have been taught and programmed to go to the light. With the greatest of respect to all of the religions and all of the teachers and everyone out there, do not go to the light. Turn around. Seek your own light. That is the trap. Because in the light, you will be reprogrammed, you will forget, and you are going to come back to this planet. You're going to be put back into the labor force. I suggest that many of you have past memories. The concept of past lives is absolutely accurate. I suggest to you that there is a true light within each one of us. And every time we shed the mortal coil, every time we go through another life, we are taken into the light, and there we are reprogrammed. And it's the same as if you were to take a cassette with your song, and they put it into their own recorder, and they record over their own song. And every time you go to the light, another song is recorded over it, until you have layers and layers and layers of their song. And I suggest to you that most of us are frustrated because we know we're different. We know there's something wrong with the system. We know this isn't true. So with great respect, do not go to the light. Go to your light. And if, ladies and gentlemen, I am wrong, turn around and go into the light. For if there is a benevolent being out there, as is portrayed in the book, then he will not begrudge you one tiny little look back. The idea of Lot's wife, who turned for one brief glimpse and was turned into a pillar of salt, I suggest that that is supposed to scare you. A benevolent God will not punish you if you take one little glimpse back. I would like to think that I am wrong, but the research seems to lead us in a different direction. I'd like to, in the last couple of minutes, thank you, Mr. Remlin, the American Freedom Radio Network, to my family, my daughter, who this is all about, and to those of you who, as myself, have spent an entire life trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Ladies and gentlemen, there isn't anything wrong with us. There's something wrong with the system. I believe that there are many, many well-intentioned, loyal, passionate renegades serving in the system, trying to make a difference, and I will not take away from their efforts. I firmly believe that the system which we are burdened with, if you make a difference, it's going to be for a very short time. We may perhaps be able to change a law or change an institution for 100 years. But the institution will heal itself over. It will take what you have worked for and turn it into something else. I suggest that the clearest example of that is probably the most famous Ieyasu in our history, a renegade teacher of righteousness, one who tried to tell the truth, who said, do not go into the churches, do not pray like the hypocrites of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, rather go into your closet and therein pray. And what he was saying is, do it yourself. Do not look for the saviors and the messiahs. Don't look for the answers out there. Because as long as we continue to empower the gods, as long as we can continue to empower the so-called divinities, there will always be a star being waiting and willing to tell us what to do if all we do is pledge our loyalty and our obedience to them. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been deceived. The most famous Ieyasu, who railed against the system, who tried to set the rejects on a path that would allow free will and destiny. His works as a renegade have been perverted. His works have now become the very foundation of the institutions that he railed against. Tomorrow, if time permits, we'll get into the history of the early church. The first 300 years of the Christian church are replete, absolutely full, with political maneuverings and the deliberate twisting of the teachings of a teacher of righteousness to serve their own purposes. In fact, the writings, the Gospels, that which we now refer to as the Bible, was not fully written, fully agreed on until 325 A.D., under the guidance of a king known as Constantine, who sought a religion for the Empire of Rome, which would give him the status of a god. He sanctioned and took Christianity as the religion of the empire. King Constantine believed himself to be the Messiah. As most of you understand, the Hebrews do not accept Jesus as the Messiah, but they do accept him as a teacher. In the Quran, they deny the crucifixion, but they accept Jesus as a righteous teacher. In 325 A.D., King Constantine attempted to make himself the Messiah. And having gathered, I believe it was 16 or 1700 scholars with the stories and the books that were at the time considered to be the epitome of Christian thought, King Constantine gathered them together in a town called Nicaea. And in the Council of Nicaea, he asked for the stories that would make him the Messiah, for them to be selected as the true book. Roughly 1,200 of the attendees protested. King Constantine immediately removed them. The remaining 300 or so scholars chose the stories that fit with Constantine's plan. In other words, the Bible was created deliberately by King Constantine to provide a religion to give him credibility so that he could declare himself as the Messiah. Tomorrow, with your permission and with your encouragement, I would like to talk about what occurred with Ra. When we left him, he was in power and was reprogramming the brains of human beings. He, in time, was undone, but the damage had already been put into place. The final thought I will leave you with is, and I've said that before and my apologies, is a very interesting thought. When Ra, realizing that he was about to be undone by the rebel queen and her minions, Ra decided to place the wealth of his empire in the hands of his children. The administration of the empire, rather than be given to the minions of the rebel queen, he handed over to trusted priests. Now, this is approximately 6,000 years ago that we placed this transition, approximately 4,000 BC. The priests selected by Ra were known as Pareya. Pareya is an Egyptian word. You can look it up in the Hieroglyphs Dictionary. We have now interpreted this word as Pharaoh. Ra himself took the title Ka, which meant the ultimate father, the father of fathers, Ra-Ka. His trusted priests were known as the Ra-Ka Pareya. To the priests were entrusted the administration of the empire. The offspring of Ra, known as the Ra-Ka suffix M, Ra-Kam, these were the children who were to gather up the wealth and keep it safe. The Ra-Ka Pareya, the administrators, today would be known as the Ra-Ka pharaohs. The Ra-Kam, the holders of the wealth, today the word Kam would be known as shield as opposed to offspring. Over the thousands of years, it changed its meaning. The wealth of the empire of Ra was entrusted to the Ra's shields, the empire's administration to the Ra-Ka pharaohs. I am suggesting to you that 6,000 years ago, two families were put into power and they remain. I find it too much of a coincidence that the Ra's shields and the Ra-Ka pharaohs resemble the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. 6,000 years ago, these families were put in power. Could they still be alive and well, conducting business and administering to the empire today? I leave that to you as a final thought. I'd like to, in the last few minutes, dedicate this to my daughter, Damien Storm, to my wife, Sue, to my family, Kat, Catherine, Karen, Richard, Mike, and all the rest of you who have assisted me, Ivy West, Rod Remlin, Sherry, Debbie, Becca, all of you who have assisted us, thank you very, very much. To you listeners, my apologies if I have offended. I have only hoped to present research which will open the mind. I believe most faiths preach tolerance. I would ask you to tolerate, but not accept what I have presented. I offer documentation on everything that I have presented. I offer other sources and other books. Some of you will reject it, and thank you very much for your time. Some of you will be interested, and I again invite you to give us a call. Please call Rod, call my family. We will be waiting for you tomorrow. Our phone number is area code 602-404-8050. Please let Mr. Rumlin know how you feel about the program. In the last few minutes, the Star Elder Papers, the story of the 6 young men who have rescued the star being and how through them the inspiration for this work began. Terra Prophecy, which we will discuss tomorrow. The fulfillment of Hopi prophecies, Aboriginal prophecies, Egyptian stories, how crop circles and petroglyphs are telling us the very, very same thing, how the comet Hale-Bopp and Hyakutake have absolutely fulfilled the prophecies. The quickening is upon us. The day of the second coming is about to occur. The last book is called The Second Coming Conspiracy. The circumstances under which we wrote it were extreme. It occurred less than 2 months ago, And on June the 6th of this month, after submitting that report to a source in Europe, I was hit by a hit-and-run driver. I believe it was a warning. I would like to think otherwise. This is perhaps the most controversial book that we have written. We suggest that a second coming is being planned. We suggest that the powers behind the secret societies and an extraterrestrial source are planning for the coming of a Messiah. But I also suggest to you that we best be aware, because it is not the true divinity who is returning. Without betraying tomorrow night's program, I do suggest that the divinity, the star being who is responsible for part of the experiment, is coming back. And the arrival time, 2011.